Welcome to News on the Hour. Over the next 60 minutes, this is your one-stop show for all that matters to you in India and the rest of the world. We cut the noise and we help you keep your poise with news that is just facts from the field of politics, business, sports, also entertainment. Taking a look at all the stories that are making headlines not only in India but also the world. But starting first up, let's take a look at the top stories that we are tracking on News on the Hour. Disengagement along LAC at both banks of Pangong Tso begins in full earnest. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh tells Parliament not an inch of land has been lost to China. Defence Minister says China to move back to Figure 8, moratorium on patrolling in some areas for the time being. Number of deceased increased to 36 in Uttarakhand disaster, 169 still missing. Rescue operations continue on war footing in Tapovan tunnel after water level recedes, while efforts on to connect Raini village with makeshift bridge. Indian vaccination over 75 lakh, healthcare and frontline workers till 8 a.m. today. WHO country representative to India lauding India's vaccination campaign as very successful. Trump impeachment trial continues in U.S. Senate. House impeachment managers argue Trump's rhetoric incited Capitol riot. Graphic footage of the attack on the U.S. Capitol on Jan 6th released as evidence. Video shows Mitt Romney, former Vice President Mike Pence fleeing as Capitol under attack. Protesters gather outside Chinese embassy in Yangon, demands no Chinese support to military. People from all walks of life join protest in Myanmar, demanding release of Aung San Suu Kyi. US President Joe Biden signs executive order imposing new sanctions against the military government. Britain also mulls stronger sanctions. And Bayern Munich lift the FIFA World Cup, beating Mexico's club Tiger 1-0 in the final. This becomes Bayern's sixth title win within the last 9 months. Well, those are the headlines at News on the Hour. Now for the stories in detail, starting first up with the talks in eastern Ladakh between India and China taking place. And in a major development, India and China have reached an agreement on disengagement at the Pangong Tso Lake region in eastern Ladakh. On Thursday, the Indian Defence Minister Rajnath Singh gave details of a breakthrough after a protracted standoff and several rounds of talks between military commanders and diplomats on both sides. Speaking on the disengagement, the Defence Minister attributed this breakthrough to sustained talks with China, leading to agreement on disengagement on the north and south banks of Pangong Lake. This further means India-China will remove forward deployments in a phased, coordinated manner. Here's more.
बातचीत के लिए हमारी स्ट्रेटजी तथा अप्रोच माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी के इस दिशा निर्देश पर आधारित है कि हम अपनी 1 इंच जमीन भी किसी और को नहीं लेने दें। हमारे दृढ़ संकल्प का ही यह फल है कि हम समझौते की स्थिति पर पहुंच गए।
Defence Minister Rajnath Singh stating in Parliament on Thursday that an agreement has been reached with the Chinese side for disengagement in the Pangong Lake area. Speaking in the Rajya Sabha in the first half of the day, he shared a detailed account of what has been achieved.
पैंगोंग लेक एरिया में चीन के साथ डिसएंगेजमेंट का जो समझौता हुआ है, उसके अनुसार दोनों पक्ष फॉरवर्ड डिप्लॉयमेंट को फेज्ड, कोऑर्डिनेटेड एंड वेरीफाइड मैनर में हटाएंगे। चीन अपनी सेना की टुकड़ियों को नॉर्थ बैंक में फिंगर 8 के पूरब की दिशा की तरफ रखेगा और इसी तरह भारत भी अपनी सेना की टुकड़ियों को फिंगर 3 के पास अपने परमानेंट बेस धन सिंह थापा पोस्ट पर रखेगा। इसी तरह की कार्रवाई साउथ बैंक एरिया में भी दोनों पक्षों द्वारा की जाएगी।
These are mutual and reciprocal steps, and any structures that had been built by both sides since April of 2020 in both North and South Bank area will be removed. It has also been agreed to have a temporary moratorium on military activities by both sides in the North Bank, including patrolling to the traditional areas. Patrolling will be resumed only when both sides reach an agreement in diplomatic and military talks that would be held subsequently.
मेरी अभी तक की जानकारी के अनुसार जो समझौता हुआ है उसका क्रियान्वयन अभी तक, मैं फिर से दोहरा, अभी तक ठीक तरीके से हो रहा है। अभी तक दोनों तरफ से सारी बख्तरबंद गाड़ियां अपने परमानेंट बेस पर वापस जा चुकी हैं, ये हमको जानकारी मिली है।
Defense Minister Rajnath Singh said that diplomatic and military engagement with the Chinese side continued despite the actions by China. Talks are based on three key principles. Both sides should strictly respect and observe the LAC. Neither side should attempt to alter the status quo unilaterally. And all agreements and understandings between the two sides must be fully abided by in their entirety. Rajnath Singh assured Parliament that India has not conceded anything to China during talks at various levels. The meeting of senior commanders will be held within 48 hours after the complete disengagement in the Pangong Lake area to address and resolve all other remaining issues.
फ्रिक्शन क्षेत्रों में डिसएंगेजमेंट के लिए भारत का यह मत है कि 2020 की फॉरवर्ड डिप्लॉयमेंट जो एक दूसरे के बहुत नजदीक है वे दूर हो जाएं और दोनों सेनाएं वापस अपनी अपनी अस्थायी एवं मान्य चौकियों पर लौट जाएं। मैं सदन को यह भी जानकारी देना चाहता हूं कि अभी भी LAC पर डिप्लॉयमेंट तथा पेट्रोलिंग के बारे में कुछ आउटस्टैंडिंग इश्यूज बचे हैं। इन पर हमारा ध्यान आगे की बातचीत में रहेगा। दोनों पक्ष इस बात पर सहमत हैं कि बाइलेटरल एग्रीमेंट्स तथा प्रोटोकॉल के तहत पूर्ण डिसएंगेजमेंट जल्द से जल्द कर लिया जाए। यह सहमति बनी है।
Defense Minister hailed the bravery of the armed forces even in the face of harsh adverse climatic conditions. He said their grit and determination to safeguard India's borders is unwavering. Rajnath Singh recalled the sacrifices made by brave soldiers, describing them as the foundation of this disengagement at Pangong Tso Lake.
With this statement in both houses of the parliament, the defense minister has silenced the opposition that has been time and again cornering the government on the Chinese standoff in the eastern Ladakh region. With cameraman Smruti Ranjan Mahapatra in Delhi, this is Vishal Baristo, DD News.
Well, joining us for the latest there on that particular story is our correspondent Nandita tracking defense for us. Nandita, good morning. Nandita, disengagement process there, beginning. But what's the sense that you get? When will this particular process, we've got Nandita waiting by for us. Nandita, when do you see this particular process getting completed? This particular disengagement process. Is there a time frame that's been put in place for this entire process to be completed?
Definitely a time frame, Anil. Actually, this disengagement is going to take place in a phased manner, and every step will be verified and counter-verified by the other side. And since the Indian Army, there is a lot of trust deficit. The Indian Army does not trust the PLA after the deception and the deceiving that it did in June at Galwan, and of course it has gone back on all the agreements. Therefore, there is a lot of trust deficit between the Indian and Chinese army. Therefore, it will happen in a phased manner. Every step will be verified, counter-verified in the Lieutenant General meeting, which is scheduled, which will take place about 48 hours after this first phase is complete. Only then will the next step be taken. And as I said, to explain to our viewers, from finger 4 to 8 will be a sort of a zone where no patrolling will take place as of now. Till an agreement is reached, all patrolling by Indian and Chinese sides will come to a halt. The Chinese side will retreat back to Sirijap post, which is to the east of finger 8. The Indian side will retreat to the Dhansing Thapa post, which is to the west of finger 3. And these are our known positions. That means both the sides will retreat to their known positions. And as per the three principles that Defense Minister Rajnath Singh pointed out, this is something that is happening on the north and the south banks of Pangong. So this agreement also entails that the permanent and semi-permanent structures that either side had built during this 9-month-long standoff, that those will be dismantled immediately. And as we saw on Wednesday, that is day before yesterday, the tanks also had started, tanks and armored personnel vehicles had already started moving back. from these friction points along Pangong Tso.
Okay. Also, now that Pangong Tso is done, what's the next, what's the next step that India would want, especially when you come to the table for the next round of commander level talks?
Yes, India would want the Daulat Beg Oldie, DBO, DSDBO sector, the Depsang Plains, and primarily Chumar and Demchok. These are the places where the frictions, where still our forces are staring down their forces for the past 9 months. And the reason we want disengagement at these places is that any small incident can then flare up into a major incident, just like Galwan happened. And that, of course, can lead to major geopolitical ramifications, that it can go into a larger conflict. Obviously, as the Defence Minister Rajnath Singh yesterday in his Rajya Sabha statement and Lok Sabha statement underlined that the bilateral relations between the two countries are incumbent upon peace and tranquility on the border, and that, of course, the key to that is disengagement. First of all, the small distance between which lies between the two opposing forces, two rival forces, that it can lead, that is like a tinderbox. It can happen, anything can happen anytime. Therefore, it is important that disengagement happens first, and India will be looking forward to Demchok, Chumar, and Depsang disengagement also.
Okay, also when you look purely in terms of how this particular talks panned out, what's the sense that you get? How did India change the playbook, or how was China caught by surprise? For this particular disengagement process to happen.
Sustained talks, three-pronged talks by India.
Okay.
Sustained talks, and definitely an approach where India did not cede anything militarily. India did not cede anything. India did not blink first. Our military resisted them, thwarted them for 9 long months, as the Defence Minister mentioned yesterday, in deep snow and sub-zero temperatures. That is something that happened, and also the valiant effort of Galwan. They were taken by surprise that the Indians could actually resist them and thwart them and cause massive casualties, as what I have been telling through DD News to our audiences since June last year, that we have caused more than 45 or around 45 casualties to the Chinese. That was a significant number, and the Chinese have not seen bloodshed since 1979 in their PLA. So therefore, they were taken by surprise. They did not expect the Indians to show this much resolve, the Indian Army, and the mirror deployment that we carried out, in the sense that we counter-deployed in equal measure on not just in men and troops, but also in terms of our equipment, our artillery, our armored personnel carriers, tanks, etc. So that is something that has actually shifted the ball, shifted the winds in our favor.
Okay, now looking at India getting a good deal, do you see India getting a good deal here? But the challenge remains immensely, especially when it comes to now taking China, and especially our relations with China, with a pinch of salt.
Oh, well, Anil, actually, the relations can probably never go back to normal. In nearly, we expect that they will go back to normal, but they can never be the same as before May last year. Yes, things have taken a positive turn, but after what happened at Galwan, it was a bloody clash. There was loss of life on both the sides, and the kind of agreements that China has revoked on unilaterally, which means it has broken the various border tranquility agreements that have been signed in 93, 96, 2003, 2000, as late as 2013. Those agreements, it will take a lot of time for trust to be rebuilt again. And yes, it is a first positive step. It is an important development in the sense that it is a beginning. But if you think that the relations between the elephant and the dragon, which are the two mighty leviathans of the Asian continent, probably will get back to normal, that or as warm relations, cordial relations, as we saw in the Wuhan and Mamallapuram summits, probably that would be too much to ask for.
Okay, too much to ask for, but surely India getting a good deal here, but the challenge continues on a very large scale. Thank you and appreciate you joining us, Nandita, with those updates there on that particular disengagement, especially in the eastern Ladakh region on the Pangong Lake region. Well, moving on now to Parliament and the budget session of Parliament. Today is the first part of the budget session of Parliament coming to an end, especially in Rajya Sabha. Let's now take a look what's happening there. Today in the Rajya Sabha, Union Minister of Finance and Corporate Affairs Nirmala Sitharaman will make a statement showing the supplementary demands for grants 2020-21 and give a reply to the discussion on the Union budget. Union Minister for Health and Family Welfare, Dr. Harshvardhan, will make a statement regarding the status of implementation of recommendations contained in the 110 and 121st reports of the department-related Parliament Standing Committee on Health and Family Welfare on the functioning of Food Safety and Standard Authority of India. Also, Union Minister for Textiles and Women and Child Development, Smriti Irani, will lay on the table a copy of the MOU signed between the Ministry of Textiles and the Cotton Corporation of India for 2020-2021. Meanwhile, while speaking in the question hour, Union Minister of Railways Piyush Goyal spoke about the safety in railways. He said that there has not been a single passenger death in the last 22 months due to railway accident. The railway minister asserted that the government is committed to safety of passengers.
In the last 6 years, we have focused more and more amounts to safety, and I'm happy to share with this august house through you, Chairman Sir, that the last passenger death because of a railway accident happened on 22nd March 2019, which means for the last nearly 22 months, we have not had a single passenger death due to train accidents.
Well, during the question hour in Rajya Sabha, Union Minister of Agriculture and Farmer Welfare Narendra Singh Tomar gave details on the record number of persons days created under मनरेगा लास्ट ईयर।
इस वर्ष जो महिलाओं के काम का प्रतिशत है वो निश्चित रूप से 52% है और इस बार मनरेगा में रिकॉर्ड काम हुआ है। 330 मानव दिवस लगभग सृजित हुए हैं।
While Lok Sabha will reconvene today at 4 p.m., two major bills will be tabled for consideration and passage. The Arbitration and Conciliation Amendment Bill 2021. Union Law Minister Ravi Shankar Prasad will move the bill further to amend the Arbitration and Conciliation Act 1996. Another important bill, Major Port Authorities Bill 2020, will be tabled for consideration and passage. The Union Minister for Ports, Shipping and Waterways, Mansukh Mandaviya, will move amendments made by the Rajya Sabha in the bill to provide for regulation, operation and planning of major ports in India and to vest the administration, control and management of such ports upon the boards of major port authorities and for matters connected therewith. Well, joining us for more on that story is our correspondent tracking Parliament for us, Vishal Baristo, joining us this morning. Vishal, thank you and appreciate you joining us this morning. Vishal, give us a sense of what exactly is in store today in Parliament, especially when it comes to, the Finance Minister speaking in the Rajya Sabha, talking about especially giving down the breakdown of, points that have been raised by the opposition with regards to, questions in the budget and also, giving a point-by-point rebuttal to the questions raised.
Well, absolutely. Good morning to you, Anil, once again. And let me tell you that yesterday the Finance Minister had sought Parliament's nod for additional gross expenditure of 6.28 lakh crores. Now, that's a huge amount. And why? Because the large chunk of that amount would go for food subsidy and also compensate for the GST shortfall. So that is the breakup that I'm giving you, but there would be important discussion on that. Yesterday, the opposition was in its attacking best, and Rahul Gandhi, though the speaker termed it as unparliamentary attitude towards all the respected members of the House, in which he attacked the government and the budget in particular. So the finance minister would be giving reply on that, and also replying to all the accusations of the Congress leader. And the government has been saying that this is the Atmanirbhar budget, and a very good budget towards that would realize the vision for self-reliant India.
Okay.
So it would be interesting to note how the finance minister reacts to word-by-word accusation of the opposition leader. Yesterday, the MOS Finance did his best as Rahul Gandhi, along with the Congress leaders, walked off the lower house, and he said that he tried to school Rahul Gandhi, saying that you are neither in parliament nor in the country most of the time, and that is why you were not prepared to discuss on the budget. That is why you are walking off the subject, and you're not speaking on it, because yesterday Rahul Gandhi had said that he is not going to speak on the budget in opposition, since it was not for the common man. So it would be very interesting to see how the finance minister reacts to it.
Okay, one quick word before I let you go. The producers told me shortage of time, but one quick word before I let you go. Looking at the last day today in Rajya Sabha and looking at a penultimate day in Lok Sabha, how would you see the business that's been transacted, in this particular first half of the budget session? Would you say that it's been fruitful and, the targets set have been achieved?
Well, absolutely, it was quite fruitful, because the government gave into the demands of the opposition parties at large, that there has to be a 15 hours long discussion, especially on the farm issue, and the Prime Minister, also the Defense Minister, trying to satisfy and answer to each and every question. The Finance Minister has already given her speech. Today she would be replying on the last day of the first break of the upper house, and in both houses of the Parliament, the Defense Minister gave a befitting reply to all the accusation of the opposition, in particular as far as the LAC is concerned on the eastern side of on the eastern Ladakh, and that was quite fruitful for the country, because India has been a winner on that issue, as China has been forced to withdraw and forced to also follow and respect the sanctity of the LAC. I would say that, because time and again China has been trying to transgress the LAC, and we and our soldiers have been giving them a very good reply. So it's been quite fruitful. Today is the last day in the upper house, and tomorrow the lower house would take the first break, as the Parliament takes a break till 8th of March. Anil?
Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you and appreciate you joining us. Also, you take good care of yourself. You've got a busy day ahead, especially with the Finance Minister speaking in the upper house. Well, shifting focus now to Uttarakhand and the state that's been affected by that glacial burst there. Rescue operations continue on a war footing in Tapovan tunnel after water level has receded. Search team is working round the clock to find the missing in a flooded Tapovan tunnel in Chamoli district in Uttarakhand. Rescuers raced to free around 35 Indian construction workers who were missing since the disaster happened. Number of deceased in the disaster is now 36. 169 people are still missing. Efforts are on to connect the Raini village with a makeshift bridge. President Rajnath Kovind will open the annual Udayan Utsav of the Rashtrapati Bhavan today. The Mughal Gardens will remain open for the general public from tomorrow till the 21st of March this year between 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. The Mughal Garden will be closed on Mondays for maintenance work. As precautionary measures, walk-in entry will not be available this year. Visitors will be allowed to see the gardens only through advance online booking. During the tour, visitors have to follow COVID protocols. 7 pre-booked hourly slots will be available. Last entry will be at 4 p.m. Each slot can accommodate a maximum of 100 persons. They will have to undergo thermal screening at entry point. People vulnerable to COVID-19 are discouraged from this particular tour. Well, shifting to COVID-19 and India's battle against COVID-19, yet another significant achievement, especially for India. In the vaccination drive, India has vaccinated over 75 lakh healthcare and frontline workers. Till this morning at 8 a.m., 75 lakh 5,000 410 people have received vaccination under the countrywide COVID-19 vaccination exercise. 4,87,896 beneficiaries vaccinated in a single day. Well, as per the latest data that's been released by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, India's active cases per million population amongst the lowest in the world. 6,636 new active confirmed cases recorded in the last 24 hours in India. 15,858 new recoveries registered in the same period. India's national recovery rate is 97.32, which continues to be one of the highest globally. Active cases rate declined to 1.25%. Total recovered cases in India at 1,05,89,230. The gap between active cases and recovered cases is continuously increasing and stands at 1,04,53,304. Well, according to the Indian Council of Medical Research, that's ICMR, a total of 20 crores 47 lakh 89,784 samples have been tested for COVID-19 so far. Of these, 7,65,944 samples were tested on the 11th of February. Well, more good news for India. WHO's Indian representative Rodrigo Ofrin on Thursday said that India's coronavirus vaccination rate is the fastest in the world. He lauded India's efforts to contain the spread of the COVID-19 disease, saying that the number of infections in the country has been on the decline.
Considering the magnitude of the population, 1.3 billion, 37 states and union territories, 770 districts, just multiply what I said in terms of key public health actions into that. And so that is something the government of India has to be very, very proud of. And bringing that diligence, discipline, and vigor into the response to a vaccination campaign. So that's another area of response. And we see that it's been so successful, around 6 million vaccinated in 22 days. It's the fastest as we see the rates of vaccination happening.
So record numbers being achieved there, and WHO's Indian representative clearly praising India or lauding India, especially in its efforts in the vaccination drive, not only keeping India safe and sound, but also helping the world in the fight against COVID-19. Well, time for us to slip into a short breather here. Lots more lined up on the other side on News on the Hour. Stay tuned and keep watching DD India.
A global pandemic that's causing havoc worldwide. Search for an effective vaccine is on. Until then, the only option is caution and prevention. Now that the country has opened up under Unlock 5, it's all the more critical that we don't let our guard down. Face mask has been found to be the most effective means to fight the spread of COVID-19. World Health Organization and various researchers have also found that masks are critical in mitigating the spread of COVID-19. When you wear a mask, you protect yourself and people around you. Wearing a face mask helps prevent the spread of COVID-19, but only if worn properly.
बिना मास्क या फेस कवर के घर से बाहर निकलने की अभी कल्पना करना भी सही नहीं है.
Be a part of DD India campaign. Mask Up India. Come and join our initiative to fight COVID-19. Share your stories of masking up with us on Facebook and Twitter.
Mask Up India.
It's a simple task. Just wear a mask.
Mask Up India. Mask Up India.
Mask Up India. Well, Mask Up India. Do not forget to wear your mask as you step out of your house. Well, time now to shift focus and take a look at all the international stories, starting first up with the Trump impeachment 2.0 that's begun in the US Senate. The Trump impeachment trial continued in the US Senate. The House impeachment managers argued that the Trump's rhetoric incited the Capitol riot, and graphic footage of the attack on the US Capitol on Jan 6th released as evidence there in the Senate. Video shows Mitt Romney, former Vice President Mike Pence fleeing as the Capitol was under attack.
The impeachment trial gathered steam on Wednesday, with Democratic lawmakers laying out their evidence that former President Donald Trump incited an insurrection by exhorting thousands of supporters to march on the Capitol last month. The impeachment managers used footage of the events of January 6, linking them to speeches of Trump to bolster their case. House managers prosecuting the case also said Trump had planted the seeds for the riot by encouraging violence and making false claims the election was stolen long before January 6.
You've seen all the evidence so far, and this is clear. On January 6th, President Trump left everyone in this Capitol for dead.
What's also clear is what Donald Trump, our Commander-in-Chief, did in those initial hours to protect us. Nothing. Not a thing. He could have commanded them to leave, but he didn't. The first critical hour and a half of this bloody attack, Donald Trump tweeted his rally speech and did nothing else.
If anyone ever had a doubt as to his focus that day, it was not to defend us, it was not to console us, it was to praise and sympathize and commiserate with the rampaging mob. It was to continue to act as inciter-in-chief, not commander-in-chief. When he incited insurrection on January 6th, he broke that oath. He violated that duty, and that's why we're here today.
Democrats aimed to show how Donald Trump laid the groundwork for the deadly attack on the US Capitol by falsely claiming the election was stolen. Screenshots from pro-Trump websites were shown as evidence that radicals in his support base were emboldened by his rhetoric to pre-plan the attack. They stated that Trump made multiple false assertions that he lost the election because of widespread fraud. Recalling the attack tearfully, Pennsylvania Congresswoman Madeleine Dean referred to Trump as a desperate president.
At 2:30, I heard that terrifying banging on House chamber doors. For the first time in more than 200 years, the seat of our government was ransacked on our watch.
Trump's defense argued that the trial is politically motivated and that free speech is protected by the First Amendment. Fast-tracking the impeachment, party leaders have agreed to move on a tight schedule that could lead to a vote on conviction or acquittal by early next week. Trump is the first US president to be impeached twice after leaving office. He's just the third president in US history to be impeached. DD India.
Well, the United States has announced a series of executive actions against the military government and people and organizations associated with the Feb 1st coup in Myanmar. The U.S. Department of the Treasury announced sanctions against 10 individuals and 3 entities connected to the military apparatus responsible for the coup in Myanmar. The statement released by the U.S. Department of the Treasury said that 6 of these individuals, including the Commander-in-Chief of the Myanmar military, Min Aung Hlaing, Deputy CIC, So Win, and First Vice President Min Saw, are all part of the National Defense and Security Council. All property owned directly or indirectly by these individuals and entities in the U.S. have now been blocked. The U.S. government also announced a series of export restrictions on sensitive items to Myanmar. The U.S. Department of Commerce said that in response to the overthrow of a democratically elected civilian government, it is implementing restrictions on the export of sensitive items to Myanmar. The Ministry of Defense, Home Affairs, Armed Forces and Security forces. Facebook announced that it will reduce the distribution of all content and profiles run by the Myanmar military as they continue to spread misinformation. The measures don't constitute a ban but limit the visibility of the content created by the Myanmar military. Meanwhile, the Myanmar military has remitted the sentence of more than 23,000 prisoners, including 55 foreigners. A large gathering of people demonstrated in front of the Chinese embassy in Yangon on Thursday, asking it not to assist the army in its effort to control the social media and mount surveillance on the protesters. Protests have grown daily in front of the Chinese embassy as social media in Myanmar published a list of cargo flights arriving in Yangon, allegedly with IT experts to help the military government build a firewall, according to the National Daily. US President Joe Biden has signed an executive order imposing sanctions on the leaders of the military coup in Myanmar. Biden said his administration was taking steps to prevent Myanmar's generals from having access to that $1 billion of government funds held in the US. Biden said he had approved a new executive order enabling the US to immediately sanction the military leaders who directed the coup, their business interests, as well as close family members. While freedom of press being suppressed, China has barred the airing of BBC World News in China from Friday. This development comes a week after Britain's media regulator revoked Chinese state television's license to broadcast in United Kingdom. China's National Radio and Television Administration said that the channel had seriously violated regulations, harming the country's national interest and undermining national unity. The BBC said it was disappointed by the decision. In a statement issued by BBC, and I quote, this is what the BBC said: "We are disappointed that the Chinese authorities have decided to take this course of action. BBC is the world's most trusted international news broadcaster and reports on stories from around the world fairly, impartially, and without fear and favor." British Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab called the move as unacceptable, curtailing of media freedom. British Foreign Secretary tweeted, and I quote, "China's decision to ban BBC World News in mainland China is an unacceptable curtailing of media freedom. China has some of the most severe restrictions on media and internet freedoms across the globe, and this latest step will only damage China's reputation in the eyes of the world." While condemning the PRC's decision to ban BBC World News, US State Department spokesman Ned Price said that the PRC maintains one of the most controlled, most oppressive, least free information spaces in the world. It's troubling that as the PRC restricts outlets and platforms from operating freely in China, Beijing's leaders use free and open media environments overseas to promote misinformation.
We absolutely condemn the PRC's decision to ban BBC World News. The PRC maintains one of the most controlled, most oppressive, least free information spaces in the world. It's troubling that as the PRC restricts outlets and platforms from operating freely in China, Beijing's leaders use free and open media environments overseas to promote misinformation.
Well, Colombia's defense minister, Diego Molina, has on Thursday said that fighting drug trafficking and dismantling armed groups are the top challenges for the country's military this year. He added that Colombia could restart aerial fumigation of cocoa, the base ingredient in cocaine, with herbicide as early as next month. In Ecuador, supporters of environmental presidential candidate Yaku Perez and Perez himself took to the streets of Quito to call for a recount of votes in 7 provinces. Perez called on the United Nations and the Organization of American States to intervene against what he called electoral fraud. He won nearly 20% of the votes in the last week's first-round presidential elections on promises that he will call a referendum on prohibiting industrial mining in order to protect watersheds. In the United States, at least 130 vehicles were involved in a massive and deadly morning car pile up along a stretch on the highway in Texas. At least 6 people died and many received injuries in the accident. Aerial images from the crash site, which a local officer said stretched for about half a mile, showed multiple large tractor trailers and trucks piled up on top of one another, with numerous vehicles crushed and wedged between them. Well, conservationists in Chile have been carrying out a census count on the South American country's population of the endangered Humboldt penguins in the hope that their research will shed new light on the behavioral patterns of the species. On the tiny Cachagua Island Nature Reserve were located some 100 miles, that's 160 kilometers northwest of the capital Santiago, and which is an important habitat for the penguins. Park rangers from Chile's CONCAF Forestry Service have been slowly counting the number of the endangered animals living on the island. Well, New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern said that the country's COVID-19 inoculation program is likely to begin on the 20th of Feb and brought forward by an earlier receipt of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine than originally anticipated. Both New Zealand and neighbouring Australia have formally approved the vaccine jointly developed by US drug maker Pfizer Inc. and Germany's BioNTech. Like India, New Zealand is also prioritising healthcare workers. New Zealand Prime Minister said that border restrictions could be eased if there was evidence that vaccines reduce transmission.
News. This morning, I can confirm that New Zealand's first batch of the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine is set to arrive in New Zealand next week, well within our scheduled timeframe and ahead of previous expectations. That means we should be in a position, all things going to plan, to start vaccinating our border workers from next Saturday, the 20th of February.
Well, US President Joe Biden on Thursday announced the purchase of 200 million doses of the Pfizer-Moderna vaccines. The US President has also expedited the shipment of another 100 million in the coming months. Well, Florida International University has deployed a dog to make sure that spaces are free of COVID-19 and safe for students. The dog will carry out its job by sniffing out places that are vulnerable. Well, a step in the positive direction to help animals help humanity at large. Well, moving on, in United States, workers are setting up new vaccination centers in the heart of 2 urban Californian communities, especially hard hit by coronavirus. The 2 sites at the Oakland Coliseum Inn and also the California State University campus in East Los Angeles are due to open on Feb 16th. The 2 sites will be capable of administering close to 6,000 shots per day. Well, French Health Minister Olivier Véran has said on Thursday that the British variant of the COVID-19 virus now accounts for a quarter of all new infections in the country. He added that the South African and Brazilian variants are responsible for 4 to 5% of the new cases in France. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa on Thursday said that the country has secured millions of doses of the Johnson & Johnson and Pfizer vaccines to fight COVID-19. South Africa has been hit hard by a second wave of COVID-19 after the discovery of a new variant in the Eastern Cape. Well, time now to take a look at the markets on how the Indian markets are performing this morning. Well, the Indian markets are trading in the green as of now as we speak. Both the Sensex as well as the Nifty now trading in green, with heavyweights such as Reliance Industries and IT stocks driving, especially keeping the markets in the green. The BSE 30 share index, that Sensex jumped 159 points. In the morning, but at this point of time, and the Nifty there crossing 15,200 but hovering around that mark at this point of time. Nifty there very much in that region of 15,190 and 15,200. That particular range is what that we are seeing there. The big drivers there, especially the IT stocks along with the Reliance, taking the markets up. Well, also a quick look on the Asian markets, on how the Asian markets are performing. Shares in Australia and Japan struggled for gains on Friday, where trading volume was expected to be low as many markets in the region are closed for the start of the Lunar New Year holiday. In Australia, the benchmark ASX 200 dropped to 0.66%, with the financials, energy and material sub-indexes struggling for gains among others. Well, after a look at markets, time now to look at sports, and Bayern Munich on a roll. They are just unstoppable this year. Bayern Munich winning that 6th title of the season inside 9 months. 6 trophies for new coach. What a dream start for any coach, or any coach can ask for. And Bayern Munich players delivering it yet again. This time around winning the Club World Cup final there, beating Tigers 1-0 in that final, clinching the 6th trophy of the season. Remember, they got a new coach, Hansi Flick, that joined the club in November, and from November, this particular coach has been, taking this particular team to stupendous success. 6 titles there. They are repeating that Barcelona magic. Barcelona managed to do that in 2009, winning all the 6 trophies. There are for grabs this time around. The German club proving a point. They won the Champions League, now winning the Club World Cup in handsome style. Though a solitary strike, but enough there to take the team home and especially lift the Club World Cup title. Well, moving to the next story there from football, but this time the FA Cup. In FA Cup, Chelsea too seem to have found or got their mojo back with a new coach, Thomas Tuchel, taking over. Thomas Tuchel has helped this club rebound back into that top sphere or the top 4 position in the FA Cup too. This particular team being able to notch a 1-0 win there in that particular outing against Barnsley. Tammy Abraham's goal that came from close range in the 64th minute, the all-important goal that was enough for the Blues to progress into the quarterfinals of the Cup. They will now face Sheffield United at home, that's Stamford Bridge, in the next round. But it is a night that won't be looked back with great fondness. Chelsea weren't pleasing on the eye, but they scrapped their way through the tie to extend their unbeaten start under new coach Thomas Tuchel. Well, Southampton, meanwhile, beat Wolverhampton Wolves 2-0 to seal their berth in the last 8 of the FA Cup. Ralph Hasenhüttl's men finally returned to winning ways as Danny Ings and Stuart Armstrong sealed the progress to the FA Cup quarter-finals. After a cagey start, Southampton surged to a 2-goal victory. Ralph Hasenhüttl's side has been on a miserable run of consecutive defeats. Goals from Danny Ings and Stuart Armstrong secured a quarter-final place. Video replays intervened in the final moments to deny Saints a penalty and a possible 3-0 rout. Well, on to the tennis courts and the first Grand Slam of the year, the Australian Open. Day 5 action at the Australian Open, and in women's singles, Sabalenka has blitzed her way into the last 16 of the Australian Open in the women's singles, producing an outstanding 6-3, 6-1 win in 1 hour over unseeded American Ann Lee at the Rod Laver Arena. In form, Sabalenka was on a 15-match winning streak with title runs in Ostrava, Linz and Abu Dhabi, and she's followed it up by reaching the last 16 stage for the first time in her career. Well, Czech Marketa Vondrousova is also through to the Australian Open 4th round after making short work of her opponent in Friday's early action. Vondrousova had a 6-2, 6-4 victory over Romanian Sorana Cristi to seal her berth in the pre-quarterfinals. Vondrousova's best performance at the majors came at the 2019 French Open when she was beaten in the final by Australia's Ash Barty. She had never previously made it past the second round in Melbourne. Serena Williams, meanwhile, overcame erratic strokes and 2 set points to beat Anastasia Potapova 7-6, 6-2 to reach the 4th round at the Australian Open. Well, from its formative years when the country was launching its own rockets to present-day scenario where ISRO is sending mission to Mars, India's space program has achieved many milestones. And now an Indian startup, Skyroot Aerospace, is pushing the boundaries even further. 2 ISRO scientists are leading the revolution in Indian space industry. Called by many as India's SpaceX, Skyroot Aerospace has recently successfully test-fired a solid propulsion rockets stage, putting India at par with the global players in space sector.
A new space age is dawning in India.
3, 2, 1, 0.
For long, humans wanted to conquer the boundaries of space, or even set up colonies in Moon, or maybe even Mars. Sounds far-fetched, right? Well, not if 2 young Hyderabadi friends are to be believed. Meet 2 former ISRO scientists, Pawan Kumar Chandana and Naga Bharat Dhaka, and their SpaceX dream. From its formative years to the present scenario where the country is spending and sending mission to the Mars, the country is now entering a new space age. And leading the bandwagon and leading the charge is 2 former ISRO scientists who have started Skyroot Aerospace. This is their story. A 2-year-old company which wants to script history, Skyroot Aerospace is in a tearing hurry. It wants to launch its first rocket by December 2021.
No parents would agree for their son or daughter to start a company. That too after having a very stable job at the government, being very well respected. In fact, they're proud that my son is an ISRO scientist. It's very difficult to, make them convinced, etc. So at that time, I thought the best idea would be just resign and tell them, It was a little bit difficult initially, but now it's like all good and they all are proud that, with Skyroot, we are doing a great journey.
We got seed funded by Mr. Mukesh Bansal, who is a serial entrepreneur and a well-known name in the e-commerce industry in India. That way, we secured a 10.3 crore initial seed investment from him.
The global space market is valued at around $360 billion and is expected to become twice this size by 2040, according to Morgan Stanley. India's current share in the global space market is just $7 billion, which is 2%. 2 of India's best startups, Dhruva Space and Skyroot Aerospace, have joined hands.
We are inspired by the great Indian scientists, and in fact we wanted to name our rocket engines after great Indian scientists, which we are all proud of. So that way, like our first engine is Raman engine. We test fired it successfully. It's a liquid rocket engine where the propellants are in liquid form. So that way, that engine has a 3D printed component, which is first time in India. A 3D printed injector successfully fired.
2020 is certainly going to be remembered as a huge transformative year for space sector in India. The key measures taken by government to liberalize and allow commercial private players to operate in space domain is going to be a huge boon for Indian space sector and economy in general.
Skyroot is now working on putting its first launch vehicle Vikram 1 into space by December 2021. The startup is currently developing 3 rockets of Vikram series. Skyroot's team also designed India's first 100% 3D printed bipropellant liquid rocket engine injector that helped reduce its overall mass by 50% and total number of components and lead time by 80%. It also successfully test-fired solid propulsion rocket stage named Kalam 5.
Eventually, we want to parallelly develop a fully reusable vehicle over the next 5 years.
Indian space industry is still in the nascent stage, but the small steps taken by Skyroot has the potential to turn into a giant step, not just for mankind, but also for the country. Tapush Bhattacharya's report.
Well, lots to look forward to across the day. We've got the Finance Minister speaking in Parliament there. Today is the last day of the first part of the budget session of Parliament in the Rajya Sabha and the penultimate day in Lok Sabha. Lots to look forward to. We'll be getting you all the updates there as it unfolds there in Parliament, and also lots to look forward to not only in India but also the world when it comes to the Trump impeachment and also the markets, and a look at the big test match between India and England that is going to be played in Chennai. But this time around, remember, there are going to be cricket fans. 50% of the stadium is going to be filled, so cricket fans are going to flock back to the stadiums. Let's hope that's going to bring about a change in fortunes, especially for the Indian teams, and we're going to see them smiling back, getting back to winning ways. Well, that's it from me and my team here on News on the Hour. I hope you enjoyed the show, but in case you didn't, you can drop us a mail. In case you liked it, do tell others. That's it from me. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.